Today, we're looking at Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold is an orange ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Nemesis Singularity with a fine nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we look at the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this was strange for me on an orange ink, that it's got this kind of very light purpley tone across the bottom that was very there, and it shows the line that was put down on the filter paper easily. Now it pushes up with a salmony color to bring in the orange and this yellow across the top. The other interesting thing that happened is the second chromatography, where I let it dry for 10 minutes. If I cover the D at the top, you would not be able to tell the difference at all between either of these chromatographies. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more important, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, do not use this as a note taker if you go back and highlight, because you're about to lose some important notes. It really blows out. Look at that G and H. I would not use it. That's not surprising when you look at what happened with water, which completely reactivated and is lifting it entirely off the paper, including what was that purpley tone at the bottom. Now, pen flesh didn't do anything more than water did, because you can't really do more than what water did. 1/3 bleach solution, you shouldn't need it. It does completely obliterate it, but water's obliterating it. For the inks I've tested, I found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold has a viscosity of 1.65, making it a very wet ink. And as it's kind of a lighter color, it needs to be wet to put more down. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making this ridiculously fast to dry. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. It's like I have something stuck in my throat. I don't know. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. This is not a color I was expecting when I got this. This was an ink I got because I had gotten all of the Private Reserves to go ahead and try them out. Otherwise, I probably would have avoided it. And it's a great example of why you should try some inks in samples. Beautiful. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It has beautiful shading throughout all of it. Thus, starts very light, gets dark at the bottom of the H, light at the top of the H, dark into the E. Beautiful. Quick, starts dark, gets light, but even in the light, it's light at the top of the letters, dark at the bottom of the letters, light between the C and the K, very dark in the K. This is a beautiful color all the way through. Great shading. 4 seconds to dry. The medium gives the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it has great shading. Look at what's going on in quick. You can't even track the dark to light to dark to light to dark to light to dark to light to dark to light, dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. It's amazing. The amount of shading that this ink is giving is gorgeous. I am so happy that I tried this. I will say that you do have to pay some attention to your nibs with this ink. I took my notes with a Nemesis Singularity fine, It's a bit harder to read, but you still get great shading throughout it. In everything with this. 9 seconds to dry on the medium. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium both show us plenty of color variation, and we get tons of it up here. The smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. Yes, it's coming through a little bit on the scrubby where I put it down stupid thick. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shading with this 1.1. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and we still get great shading, even on Tomoe River. Look at how quick is a nice mid-tone, very dark at the K. Brown starts very dark, gets to a mid-tone at the W, very dark at the N. Fox, very light to dark, beautiful, and 7 seconds to dry. The medium is a darker tone than the extra fine. It's just about as dark as the 1.1, but we see a lot more of the shade come through. The medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is gorgeous. Again and quick, very dark to mid-tone to light to dark again. Brown starts light and works its way dark. Same with Fox, light to dark. Beautiful the whole way. 15 seconds to dry. Wow. On Tomoe River. Wow. The scrubby for both show us plenty of color variation, and we still get plenty of color variation. And the smear test, you can actually recover this if you smear. Like, it's not showing as well on camera. Let's see if I can come a little closer and if we can get it. You can see the lines on Tomoe River, even with this light ink. It is great. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and beautiful shading. The word reserve really makes it jump out there. It's a mid-tone to dark, to mid-tone to light, to dark. Beautiful. And it's like that all over. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is amazing. Quick. Again, the back and forth between light and dark constantly. You can't even keep up with how much the tone is shifting. Fox starts as a mid-tone on the bottom of the F. The top of the F is light. Light across Fox. X very dark. Beautiful. 5 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is amazing. Just as amazing as the extra fine. Brown starts, it's got a light in the top of the B, dark bottom of the B, mid-tone through, very dark at the end. Fox starts light and gets dark, but the bottom of the F is very dark. Beautiful. I don't know how long this took to shade or dry. I don't know why I missed writing it down, but I missed it, so I don't know it. The scrubby for both show us a lot of color variation, and we're getting a lot of color variation. And the smear test, you could still recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So we look at Apica paper, where we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it has gorgeous shading all the way through it. That same constantly back and forth, and it's a rapid amount of drastic color variation. In the S of reserve, it's light at the top, dark in the loop, dark in the E, light in the R. Mid-tone V gets dark in the V and dark on the E. Gorgeous. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it has beautiful shading. Just absolutely beautiful. I'm going to point out the one word in here that doesn't seem to have a lot of shading, which is the word brown. It's a great mid-tone all the way through. If it didn't shade, it's a great color. But directly to its left with quick, we see it's dark and light and dark and light and dark and light all over. Fox starts light and gets dark. Beautiful. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine. Medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and beautiful shading. This crazy amount of shading back and forth with this ink. The word quick, it keeps showing it off. Nice and light at the top of the Q, dark at the bottom, dark into the U, mid-tone out of the U into I, starts working its way lighter and then very dark at the K. Beautiful. Fox starts light and works its way dark. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us a lot of color variation, and we get tons. And the smear test, you could still recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Nemocene. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread,
halo sheen, and still has great shading throughout all of it. Not as wild as we've seen with some of the other ones, but beautiful. Look at the word reserve. Nice and dark on the R, light at the bottom of the R, dark into the E, light into the S, dark at the bottom of the S, dark E, very light R, mid-tone V, very dark E. Beautiful. The extra fine is well, the same tone. I wanted to say slightly lighter, but it's the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, still gorgeous shading. Fox goes from very light to very dark, jumps very dark to mid-tone to a dark spot, back to mid-tone. Beautiful. And lazy, dark spots with light spots, dark spots with light. It's just, it's never seen shading like this, where it shades so much, so rapidly. 4 seconds to dry. See how, nope, that sounds weird, I think. There we go, back to that. It was sounding weird, and I changed the setting, and I did not like it, so we're back. Mid-tone, same exact as the extra fine. The mid has no feather, spread, halo sheen, beautiful shading all the way through. Very light to very dark on the Fox, very light to very dark on the jumps. Brown starts very dark, gets very light, gets very dark again. Gorgeous stuff. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us a lot of color variation, which we keep getting. Lots of color variation. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. This is Leuchtturm 1917. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it has a little bit of shading. Not a lot of shading, a little shading. This is the least shading we've seen on this ink at all. But it just doesn't give us those dark areas. It goes from lights to mid-tones. Like gold goes a mid-tone to a light to a mid-tone, stays mid-tone, light into the loop of the D, back into mid-tone on the upper part of the D. Very nice. Extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen. Still very nice shading. Not as wild as we've seen with the other papers, but still gorgeous. Quick, starts light, gets mid-tone, gets to a darker mid-tone. Not dark, but a darker mid-tone. Fox starts light and works its way dark. Dog is one of the few words without shading in it. But while it has no shading, the amount of shading that's going on around it still makes the word dog stand out beautifully. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and beautiful shading. Not as much. Not as much. Like brown starts dark, gets to mid-tone, gets dark. Fox goes mid-tone to dark on the X. Lazy, mid-tone to dark to mid-tone, all the way through, and then just part of the Y is a nice dark tone. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us, well, the scrubby for the extra fine shows us more color variation than the medium. Medium, you have to look far left to far right to really be able to see it, but there is plenty of color variation in the writing. And the smear test, I still think you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page, and I wanted a nice dusty black. I chose Birmingham Pen Company's Edgar T. Steelworks Coal Black. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Private Reserve's Shoreline Gold? Its shading is amazing in every nib that I've used. However, I do think using a broader nib to put more ink down is the advantage. Using a drier or finer nib can make it a bit harder to read because it's not putting as much down. This is a great example of an ink that is perfect to get in a sample, because frequently we avoid buying an ink with its name, like Shoreline Gold. I was really thinking this ink would be too light to be able to comfortably use. And it's not. It's a beautiful ink that the name might make somebody not want to try it. I think this is worth giving a shot in a sample because you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Thanks for watching.